Hey guys, welcome back. Captain Clutch here once again. Back for some more Euro trucking goodness. We're still here in our Volvo, somewhat modified, but still pretty much stock. We're hanging out over in the far eastern side of Poland, over in the, I think it's going east DLC stuff. And yeah, we're going to pick up our load and continue our adventures from there. Maybe today we'll talk a little more about some braking systems in the truck while we're at it, and yeah, just have a quick candid discussion about that. So without any further ado, let's hit the road. Welcome back. So we're just on our way here to pick up our shipment. A little bit of light rain, and it looks like it just ended actually. Perfect. So we can sneak in here right now. There we go. So I believe we have a couple tractors to pick up here, a front end loader and a backhoe, and they're both sitting right there, ready to go. Now these tractors will be heading down the eastern seaboard. Lublin, I believe, is where we are heading next. So we'll take them down there. Should be a couple hundred clicks again. A little bit on the inside. So I'm gonna line that nadir pin up. Perfect. So there we go. So we'll just get out and take a quick look at connecting our trailer here. Shut her down. Put our brakes on. So you can see we've got our air hoses that are hooked up to the back of our truck right now. They're hanging there, and our electrical hose as well. And then you have your landing gear, which currently is in the down position, holding the trailer up in place. And the nadir pin was just locked into our fifth wheel hitch of our truck. So just by hitting the key, we can raise our landing gear and connect all our hoses. So you see the lights come on now, so it's connected to the electrical power of the truck. And those two lines that have been connected will be controlling the brakes on the trailer. So that's very similar to yeah, North American, I guess, or any other trailer for that matter. Large trailer. I mean, there's some different types of trailers, braking systems out there, but if you've got an air brake truck, chances are you've got an air brake trailer system as well. See there, you hear the service brake, or the parking brake getting shut down, and we will head out. Now I don't understand how that works in European trucks. In North American, your parking brake that I just activated there, turned off, you will have two of those handles instead, and usually one's yellow, one's red. The yellow one is your emergency or your parking brake for the truck, and then the red one beside that is the same thing, the emergency parking brake for just the trailer, and you have to activate that when you want to disconnect your hoses from the trailer to and it'll engage the brakes essentially as well. I'm not sure how the systems work in Europe, but obviously they're a little bit different. I don't see any way of activating that on this truck. Just a bit of an oddity, I guess I just noticed, but yeah. Put our brakes on and take a quick look outside the truck here. So all our lights are working, brake lights, our signals, everything's up and operational. So while we're on the topic of braking systems, you can see in the bottom right hand corner of my dash cluster, pardon me, you've got one gauge there, and that is your air brake cylinder pressure, and that's how much pressure your brakes will currently have. So if I do an applied, now you wouldn't want to do this, but if I apply the brakes, I've got my emergency brake on right now, but so you're going to be compounding your brakes and can possibly damage your rotors or your drums. So you wouldn't want to do this, but you could take your brakes off and do it like this. And now if I apply the brakes, you'll see that's dropped below the orange level. And so it should be below 90 psi, which means the compressor has now fired up. At some point in time here, you should see that gauge start to increase as the pressure builds back up in the tanks. Now at idle, it is a little bit slower. If you go up into a high idle or you rev the engine up a little bit, it should be a little bit faster. Let's see what happens here if I increase throttle a little bit. So you see now it's starting to build pressure in that cylinder, and your air brakes are coming up. Now once it gets to the top end of that orange line, that will mean your brakes are around 120 psi, 130 depending on how it's set up. Most of them are around that mark. And you'll hear a blow-off valve go off and a short burst of air will blow out and the compressor will shut down, and it should hold that pressure and be good to go for your next blade braking application. So there are some set standards on from idle how long it takes for that compressor to fire up. It's usually about a minute and a half from no pressure to serviceable or engageable, I guess. Anyways, so I think that's what the standard is. So you can see here. Let's see if we can hear the compressor shut down. Here should be any second now. There you go. That was it right there. So it is impressive that the fact they've modeled it so well. I do enjoy that portion of this simulation at least. So anyways, done a quick brake check there. Let's get on the road. That's one thing I've noticed they don't have in any of the Euro Truck Simulator. I'm not sure the American, I haven't played around with it enough to notice on the American side if they have any runaway lanes or brake check areas. I mean, that would be another interesting way to go with the game. I know that in the American Truck Simulator they do have the weight scales, but at least in my neck of the woods there's tons of areas where downhills, before you come up to a large, long downhill section, you're expected to go in and test your brakes and check them to make sure that they're operating properly. I don't know if they've gotten to that point with this or not, but maybe the downhill sections are... Why did I stop? It's not a stop sign. They're just not long enough yet. Hopefully when they get into like the Colorado region, maybe we'll see it then, but time will tell. Maybe even a chain up section as well for when you're going back up, especially in Colorado if you get into a snowstorm. So anyways, we're on our way to Lublin, like I said. I believe, what's our weight here? Let's take a quick look. So our weight is 23 tons, so it's a little on the heavy side for us, that's for sure. And I believe we're around the 230 kilometer mark, 214 we're down to now. Okay. So it'll take us a couple hours to get there at game time. Since we're on the topic of air brake system, we should probably just quickly discuss the differences here between your typical tractor trailer air brake system and your passenger vehicle or domestic almost sedan. So the biggest difference obviously is you're going from a hydraulic system to an air brake system. So your personal vehicle will typically have a hydraulic system or a hydraulic assist system, where when you apply on the brake, it goes into a little hydraulic pump, and this hydraulic fluid will then be used to apply pressure to the brake pads or disc brakes or whatever, what have you. The nice thing about that is hydraulic fluid is not compressible, so you get a very predictable feel to how the pedal is when you apply the brakes. The downside to that is that it's very difficult to apply the amount of pressure needed in that hydraulic system to slow down a vehicle that is 20 some odd tons. So that's why we've gone to air brakes in tractor trailer units. Now, the actual braking system or the brakes themselves are very similar to your commercial vehicle, your standard personal vehicle. You'll have either a drum and rotor set, or drum and pads I should say, or in Europe especially you'll find more disc brake systems. In North America we haven't gone fully into the disc brake systems yet. We're getting there, but we're still a little bit behind the times, and we tend to prefer the drum brake style a little bit still, regardless of which. The main component of an air brake system will be your brake pod or your air chamber. There's two portions to that. There's two different chambers inside that. One side they call it the spring brake, and then the other is just your regular service brake. So the spring brake side, let's actually talk about the service brake side first. So it's just an open chamber with a baffle inside of it that, when pressurized by when you apply your brake and pressure goes into the chamber, it just forces the brake to push out a push rod, which applies the brakes. So there's nothing really special about that in the grand scheme of things. It's just air pressure that's forcing out a push rod and applying the brakes like you would expect in any other vehicle, essentially. On the other side of the chamber, or on the back side of the chamber I should say, you will find a large high tensile strength spring. And that spring, when the brakes are not in use, so when your truck is off, there's no no pressure in the system, it will be somewhat unraveled, or I guess forced out, or it'll be in its relaxed position, because it will force out and that's forcing the brakes out, so it'll apply the brakes. So the thing about that is it's giving you an emergency braking system if for some reason your air system in your truck fails. So usually there's a certain amount of pressure that's required in that chamber for that to apply pressure on the spring to relax the brakes. So usually it's around 30 psi, somewhere in that range. As soon as the pressure is into the braking pod and applies pressure on that spring, the brakes will release. Now if you don't have that pressure, that spring will relax or push out or force pressure out, and it will apply the brakes. So it's just a kind of a dead man switch almost, really, if you think of it that way. So the other major component obviously is an air compressor. They come in various sizes depending on the size of your brakes and the brake pods in your truck itself. They typically range, I believe the top end you're looking at about 130 psi is what they top out at in that brake cylinder, or in the compressor I should say, and it'll blow off, and then usually turns on around 90. Low air alarm on these trucks typically go off around 60 psi, so if you sit there and hammer on your brakes a bunch, if you go into a parking lot and you're trying to get into the right position and you're fighting to get it into that spot, you'll find that you'll hear a dinging noise. That's your low air alarm going off. Typically you'll get a dash light as well, and that's around the 60 psi mark. And then I believe 30 psi is when the emergency brakes will just engage. So that pretty much does it for that air brake system. Anyways, it's interesting just to see the comparisons. Now the only problem, I guess, with an air brake system that we should probably discuss as well, the main reason we're talking about this, like I said, when you have a hydraulic system, the hydraulic fluid doesn't typically compress, or if it does very little. So you get a very predictable feeling to your pedal, and when you press on that pedal, the brakes are typically applied very quickly. With an air brake system, air tends to compress a little bit, so you get what we call brake lag. So when you first push on the brake pedal, it takes a short period of time for the pressure to build up, and while you first think you have pressure on the pedal, you may find that it still is building and it's not quite enough yet, so you have to push a little bit harder after that. So that's just a little bit more delayed as far as the braking action is concerned, and something you have to get used to, and may cause you some concern the first time you go in and apply the brakes. Just something to be aware of. Now they have modeled that in this in the game as well. Whoa, what's going on here? You guys, thanks for that. So it has been modeled. You do feel it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not sure if there was more ways they could have modeled it, but you definitely notice that there is a bit of braking action, and then it comes on stronger afterwards. So you'll notice when you're coming around to a corner, coming up to an intersection, if you plan just to hold a steady portion of the brakes, or you choose a brake percentage to go with, if you just leave it at that percentage, typically you'll either come up too short or you'll go in too hot. You have to kind of vary it just a touch, just to get the right braking action to make it around a corner, make it through an intersection on a corner. And there's a bit of an art to it, I guess, as well, once you get used to your vehicle, and how not to be jerky with it. If you're coming to a complete stop, right, if you apply the brakes, that even goes for your personal vehicle too. When you come to a complete stop, you don't want to make it all jerky when you stop. You always kind of want to let off just a little bit at the end of your braking action, just before the vehicle comes to a complete stop. You don't get that rocking back and forth feeling. You can just kind of ease into the stop instead of just stopping dead right then and there. I think I've been going a little under the speed limit on this trip for some reason. Now as well on some trailers, like I said, you've got an air brake system on the trailer that'd be very similar to that in the truck. So you just have those air hoses that go back there, and they run the pressure back to the brake pods that'll be on the trailer. But on some smaller trailers, we're talking domestic, like fifth wheel or travel trailers, a lot of the times they'll have, because you're towing it with a vehicle that doesn't have an air brake system, but you want to have brakes that are in the trailer still. So you've gone to more of an electric brake system. So there'll be some kind of a battery or something, or run off the truck's battery for that matter. It'll have something that'll apply the brakes, and the way the brakes work on those is a little bit different. You have a different type of brake controller that doesn't necessarily sense the amount of brake pressure you're putting on. It's more of an on-off type of sensor. Now, depending on how much you want to pay for those brake sensors, you can change. You can apply different ones. But when you have an electric motor that's kind of applying brakes, it's a little more difficult to get the correct style of braking. So usually you set the brakes to either you're setting the brakes to be maxed on depending on the weight of your trailer. So to test it, usually they'll have you go up to 30 kilometers an hour and just apply your trailer brakes at max on, and your rear tires or the tires on the trailer shouldn't quite skid. It should almost be at a skid or locking up, but they should be just stuttering. So you get a large amount of braking force without locking the trailer up at max braking force. And obviously, as you put more weight in the trailer and take weight out, that changes how the trailer behaves and how the braking action does. So every time you load the trailer or unload the trailer, you have to kind of retest your brakes to make sure they're adjusted properly. Now that can all be done inside the cab of your truck. That's usually a 5-second test, but nonetheless, it's something you have to do a little bit more often. So we've got some tracks up ahead here. Don't want to hit these going too fast. And make sure no trains are coming. A lot of traffic here. Did I get around? Did I get around? I did too. Good. Looks like it's going to be close. Looked like it was going to be close. So while we're at it, we can talk about the rest of the gauges on the dash cluster as well there. So, like I said, the air brake pressure is your bottom right. Right next to that on the left is your fuel, and then above that is your DEF fuel, so it's like a blue fuel icon beside it there. That's your DEF fuel, or fluid I should say, for environmental cleaning reasons. So obviously your speedo and your tack above that. Below that on your left, I believe that there is your coolant temperature versus the first gauge. I need to slow down, we got a traffic camera right here, under 50, come on, slow her down. And then, yeah, the next one on the left is the engine oil temperature. Oh, I'm going to be rubbing there, that's too tight. Yeah, so you got your coolant and then your engine oil. And then above that, it will be your boost. And I believe on this truck here, that's giving you boost. Oh, get over. There's no way I could have made that. That's cost me $500. Just a little rub on his front bumper. There's just so much traffic. And it's all buses and trucks. What's this guy doing here? Oh, breakdown. Yeah, so I believe your boost, that's all to do with your turbo on this truck. So as your turbo spools up, when you hit the gas, you'll see that'll spool up and give you more pressure. Give you a little extra horsepower. See between shifts there, it takes a bit, spools up, and yeah, you get a little more power out of it. There's a certain point, at a certain RPM, you start losing power, you'll see it start to decrease as well. It's meant to operate at a certain RPM, essentially. So I believe we are almost in Loveland here. Oh, come on. Is it really going that fast? It's brutal. Just minor lapse in judgment. Thought I was doing 55 maybe. I must have been doing 65. Yeah, I definitely was. Coming to think of it now, just looking at my speedo. So we're not making much money off this trip, but it was fun nonetheless. A $500 rub, and I don't know what that ticket was costed, 160 maybe? I didn't see. overall job price was about 6 grand, minus fuel, of course. I don't even want to factor my time into this. Well, maybe that'd be a whole 53 cents, I guess, but... Alright, oh, and we're on the back end. Look at this, that'll be a fun spot to get into. Let's see here. Is there a spot for me to do a 360? Not really. So I can't really spin around in here, so I'm going to have to do a bit of a 3-point turn. And we'll see if we can do this without dry steering at all, because like I said before, that's not exactly great for your tires or for your power steering pump. So what you want to do is try to get the trailer going in the right direction before you come to a stop. So you can see I kind of did a bit of an S-bend there. Got the trailer kind of already moving in that direction. So when I start backing up, it's already going to start to kind of move to the left there. Now, this is the tough part, is you've got to try and judge where that axle is. And doing it with your mirror is pretty tough, so it doesn't hurt if you need to stick your head out every once in a while. Just try to see if you can judge to get her back in there. And you know what, if you miss it, rather than back into the fence there, you're better off just to pull forward straight ahead, get yourself lined up, and do it a little bit the easy way. Now see, like I'm turning a little bit too hard. Let's see if we can save this. Get back there, come on, get straighten out. Oh, look at that. Oh, but I think I went too far. I went too far. See, so now I've gone too far, so I'll just pull ahead quickly, crank in the other direction. Just before I'm about to straighten out, I'll stop and then crank in the other direction in reverse. And we'll call it a day. There we go. Alright, our trailer is in position and we are done. That's the end of that trip. Awesome, well thanks for coming along for the ride, guys. If you enjoyed that video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see some more, we'll be doing more of these as the days go by here, so please do hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos from me. Otherwise, we will see you the next time. Keep the shiny side up. Talk to you later.